Greetings, true believers, and welcome to episode 13 of the Pull List Podcast, a bi-weekly show about comics, pop culture, and faith. My name is Chris Poirier, and here by my digital side, as always, is the one and only Mr. Faith and Fandom himself, Hector. How's it going today, Hector? Hey.
Doing good. Just over here in North Carolina, being the Kevin Smith of Christian nerdiness. So
that's awesome. The Christian Kevin Smith of nerdiness. I like it. So I'm holding down everything from here in wonderful South Georgia, which feels weird to say, but that's where I live now. So it's awesome.
How wonderful is South Georgia?
Right now that the pollen has kind of passed, it's great. Last week, I thought I was dying by some airborne viral craziness. It was bad. Pollen, it's a thing. If you live in Georgia, you know it's a thing. North Carolina, it's coming.
We've already had pollen, dude.
Oh, good. Then we're all through that, so we don't sound congested, and this is going to be a great podcast. So everyone, strap in, prepare yourself for We've Got Comic Sign.
Better put the word out. Can't wait for the nerd out. Better put specs on.
On today's episode of the Pull List Podcast, Hector and I will take a magical journey through the past 2 weeks of comic book industry news, have a discussion on Batman Detective Comics number 1000 and 80 years of the Batman. And then we'll wrap up with what we pulled over the last couple weeks. So all we want to know is, who's coming with us? Are you guys coming with us? Well, you don't really have a choice because you're already clicked play and you're listening to this podcast.
I'm pretty sure they can stop whenever they want.
I mean, maybe they can, but don't do that. We're just getting started. So let's get to the news. Let's kind of talk about what's been happening the last couple weeks. Because as usual, there's lots of stuff going on in comics. So let's see. What I pulled up off from the top is, I don't know if you've been seeing any of this or, if it's one of your things, because I don't remember you saying a lot about IDW titles other than some of the Turtles you've been jumping back into. But there's a lot of shaking of the trees and rumbling that IDW may actually be for sale.
Yeah, but when something like that actually happens, who buys a whole company?
Isn't that interesting? And of course, what's really wild and what we don't really know from seeing some of the details is IDW has holdings other than comics. They have an entertainment division that does TV and movie type stuff. And of course, they have their comics division. They also have a division that does like massive hardcover art edition of stuff. So they do a lot of licensing. I think
my biggest IDW investment was like the Buffy series stuff. I think before Whedon's actual, Buffy season 8 stuff, or like when IDW was doing hardcore Angel and Buffy stuff, like hardcover, not hardcore. Maybe it was hardcore. But I have some Angel like After the Fall things and stuff like that are the only things that stroke in my mind that I have like a solid IDW presence.
No, and I think that's a thing for a lot of folks is, like I said, IDW, a lot of their core business is typically in licensing. So it just depends on what stuff they have during what time. Obviously, right now, they're the home of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Might have heard of them. Heroes on the Half Shell and such. But
most of Turtles' big stuff lately has been like Turtle Batman crossover.
Sure.
Like, and not that the Turtle stuff that IDW making isn't great, but like they've been riding Batman's like coattails / cape for a minute.
For a hot minute, and they're about to revisit that territory. If you didn't know that, I believe the Batman Turtles 3 title pending is on its way, so we'll be seeing more of that. So you're not wrong.
And the animated movie is dropping, so that'll fuel that.
Yep, so there's all kinds of wonderful things going on there. It's just there's been a lot of internal turmoil at IDW, folks leaving, folks coming back. It's just been a really tough time, it seems like, over at IDW, but at the same time, knowing some of the folks and hearing them talk, everything does appear to be going in the right direction. So even though it looks like they might be looking for someone to take over, to be more of a funding, to be a new parent, all we know is that at least they've called in JP Morgan to start looking over their assets and try to potentially set a valuation for the company. So the short answer is, like most things in comics, I guess we're just going to have to wait until the next issue drops and we find out what's actually going on.
Well, Disney's just going to buy it. That's kind of like the end of the story for everything anyway. So
Yeah, so that seems about right. And it's interesting because Marvel did throw IDW a lot of their licensing recently, and they'd been doing some Spider books. They've been doing some younger hero action books for all ages and whatnot. So that's not necessarily a bad thought. But speaking of the Mighty Mouse and the Marvel empire that Disney has acquired as of late, do you see this absolute insanity that Angelina Jolie may finally be making her step into the Marvel Cinematic Universe? What say you?
Well, first of all, the average person doesn't know who the Eternals are. That if you're not a comic book reader, and real talk, even if you are a comic book reader, there's a good chance you don't know.
You're not wrong.
Eternals are straight up less well known than the Guardians were before the movie dropped. And so, what was the TV show that Marvel did? Then it was like their first real big flop on ABC that had the dude from Game of Thrones in it, and the lady with the red hair that moved, and the big dog. What show was that?
Oh, yeah. No, why did my brain just do that? That's not even fair. Oh, wow. People are laughing at us right now.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing because, right. So what's even worse is the only thing that's sticking in the back of my head is the Royals, which isn't even what it's about.
I'm hearing Immortals in the back of my head, and I know that's not right either.
It's not right. No, it's not.
We're the worst.
See,
we're not qualified to host the show anymore.
We're just going to quit.
Turn off the mics now.
Oh, right. No, I got it. It's Inhumans. It's absolutely Inhumans.
Immortals. Yeah, there we go.
We need to talk. Yeah, we need to talk about this for a minute. Marvel dropped that pile on us, and it literally managed to evaporate an entire string of heroes in the Marvel universe from Hector's in my mind for a full minute right there.
They retconned it because it was so bad. Like we have been like MIB flashed that show even existed. And real talk, I expect the Eternals to be about on that same level. So it's hard for me to look on with enthusiasm at a lot of the future of the MCU because I feel like everything we're moving forward with in new properties is going to be like, for lack of better terms, B or C or D list characters compared to the ones that we've had. So,
and yeah, they are running out of a little bit of runway. They decided to tell the biggest story they possibly could up front, which makes sense for entertainment. You got to make that dollar and you got to keep making it. So as comic fans, we're excited to see some of the lesser known characters, but eventually on the big screen, we're in the mid-20s in terms of number of movies, all these TV shows and everything else that it's a lot, but whatever.
Like I'd straight up forgot Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was still going.
It's about 2 seasons past when it probably should have stopped going, to be completely honest. And that's this podcast host's humble opinion. I'm prepared to get scorched in the comments for that one. But yeah, that story had a purpose. And clearly when they hit that purpose and they were like, we could get one more season out of it, maybe 2. It kind of became obvious to me that that's what happened. And hopefully they don't do that in the cinematic universe. But then again, we're talking about doing the Eternals. So
yeah,
either way, you're going to get to see Angelina Jolie quite possibly in that environment. So congratulations, America. We're finally putting everybody into a Marvel movie, and no matter what, it's a glorious thing. I'll dial back my negative impact for a moment and just take a page from Kevin Smith's book of, I'm going to go to all these movies and be excited about them because we have them. And there was a time that we didn't get to have these. So we're just going to ride this wave and enjoy every possible moment of it. So
but you can only experience so much saturation before you drown.
That's absolutely true. And hopefully we're not getting there, but we might be. We'll have to wait and see how Endgame wraps up and what they dangle before us as what's to come. Because as we've talked about before, that movie's going to be an ending and probably a beginning as well. So time will tell.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of other movies, we should probably talk about the Joker trailer.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to check that out?
I did.
All right. Well, what are your feelings? How did that make you feel on the inside?
It made me feel awkward, I think, was my original response to that trailer. Because it felt like they were building up to showing him full snap demented or anything. But, like, realistically, it just made him look like he was emo, so he put on clown makeup. Like, we never actually see him go full villain or anything. And I'm assuming that that's young Bruce Wayne that he's playing with through the fence.
Yeah, there've been a few others that have insinuated that, so I'm okay with accepting that for the time being. Because right?
Because this obviously plays no continuity to anything, unless this is going to be one of those he spawns another generation of Joker after this. But like, I don't know, like it just feels weird, you know. First of all, this is outside of the little bit of the comedy club we've seen, this has no reflection of any previous Joker origin we've seen.
Right.
Like this is not Killing Joke, this is not Dark Knight, this is not a Joker origin we've seen. But you know what's really funny? It looks to me very much so like it fits in with the Joker of Tom King's Batman run.
Oh, interesting. I do kind of have that vibe as well, that there's clearly something. Just real quick, I had the same thing. Like, I watched that trailer and I went, I think I need a hug, because I'm not sure what I just experienced, but I feel uncomfortable and I need an adult.
Yeah, and it's like severe mommy issues and eternal pain and isolation. Like, I mean, that's been the premise of the Joker since the Killing Joke, is that everyone is just one bad day away from snapping.
Right.
But like, it made me think of the Tom King run because you know, I'm contractually obligated to praise Tom King at least 3 times per podcast.
That's not true, but go on. Wait, are we? Tom?
You didn't read my contract. Bubba like threw in a Tom King clause. But
that makes sense. I blame Bubba too.
There's the issue where the joke right before the wedding-ish thing that didn't happen, where the Joker hijacks a church, kills all the people in the church, and then spends the entire issue talking about his mother, and then asks Batman to get on his knees and pray with him. That was the first time I've really heard a fleshed out mother situation beyond the Dark Knight. Because all of the Joker's origin stuff has always centered around, you know, his wife or something around those natures, or, you know, his gangster past. This one lines up with Tom King's writing more than anything I've seen.
I completely missed that. And now I'm going to have to go back. I want to go back and reread that issue and kind of think about the two side by side. So, okay, everyone, first time ever on the Pull List podcast, you have homework. You should pick up that issue and take a look. That would have been during the lead up. So that was somewhere around issue 48 or 49.
Yeah, I was about to say Batman 48 or something. I'm going to look it up. Go ahead.
So we'll drop that in the show notes for you so you can partake in the homework for this week, which is reading some of Tom King's Batman and then watching the Joker trailer and then finding the closest loved one you can and hugging them as tightly as possible so that this terrible, terrible existence doesn't continue. I think the other thing that really stood out to me as fascinating for a Joker kind of origin in this construct was the concept that he was getting therapy even before the break that obviously comes at some point. That typically we see the Joker goes to Arkham after he's full Joker and everything, and in this reality, he seems to be getting help before he goes sideways. So there was just a lot going on in that trailer, and I know pretty much the entire world had an opinion on it, but I'm still excited. I think Phoenix looks pretty freaking great as the final product or approaching the final product. That I'm excited to see how it plays out.
By the way, it's 48 and 49.
So it was both.
48 is part 1. It's called the series. The run is called The Best Man, and yeah, there you go.
Excellent. So that's your homework. Come back and maybe we'll discuss a little more in our next episode or at some point, or maybe we'll just drop a quick hit on that because it is very interesting. To me, it also seems like they're going to throw all of it at us and then we won't find out what this really is until we see the movie.
Yeah, but I really don't feel like at any point I was menaced. Like,
That's fair.
Like, I felt awkward. I felt uncomfortable. I felt empathy. But I never felt like villain. I don't know. Like,
True.
I want, God forgive me. I felt more menaced at Leto's presence than I did in that trailer.
So don't worry, fans. We're going to make sure that Hector gets the appropriate help or that he doesn't return to the podcast.
It's true.
Because I don't know what to do with that.
Tell me Leto wasn't more menacing than what you saw in that trailer.
If we're going to use the definition of menacing, maybe I'll give you that one. But
I'm not going to say he's a better Joker. I'm saying he was more menacing.
Yeah, I was going to say, did that pain you a little bit on the inside as you said that?
A little bit.
Oh, wow.
Realistically speaking, I know this is a tiny rabbit trail, but like I feel like Leto's Joker could have been so much better if we just dropped the whole tattoo thing and whatever we got cut from Suicide Squad by Warner Brothers and actually gave that whole thing. I felt like we could have had a lot more potential there. But going on.
Sure. I kind of felt the Death in the Family vibe there. Of the Family, the second one in the New 52, that was the Joker I was seeing. But yeah, that's a rabbit trail. So fans, you can go and check that out as well. Some good stuff right there. So we should probably move on from the Joker trail, but it's out. We're starting to see more. I'm still excited, but yeah, I think there's a lot of things to still figure out what's going on there.
Well, what really got me was how polarized the responses were.
Right.
Just because I shared the trailer on the Faith and Fandom page, and it was one of my most commented posts, which was funny. But beyond that, it was literally about half and half of this looks like garbage, and I'm so excited. Like,
yeah, I saw the same thing in other places and places I commented as well, and I was like, wow, we're certainly opinionated about our Joker.
I love that Joker.
So good. But did you have anything that you saw kind of jump out for the week that popped and you were like, we have to talk about? I know we got lots of movie information coming out and stuff. Was there anything that I missed this week that you were thinking about?
Well, just for me, like news-wise, I'm a Kevin Smith fan, and I really am excited that the Jay and Silent Bob reboot finished filming. That we're getting another Jay and Silent Bob movie, and it, for the non-reference part, this is like comic book culture in that the original Jay and Silent Bob was about their comic book, which was being turned into a movie, so they went to stop it. And this one is about the reboot of their comic book, which is being turned into a movie, so they're going to stop it. But also, this is Kevin Smith's first real big thing since he bounced back from his heart attack. And,
yes,
so he is literally, I've never seen him be this active on social media during a project. So literally, like every day of filming had his Instagram praising the actor or people he was working with because he was so excited to still be doing this. And just following his Instagram for this movie has honestly been an encouragement to me of like, carpe diem, so to speak, and get your crap together, because he really is excited to still be alive through all of this. So the movie might be hot garbage. It might be terrible. And it's not like you go into a Kevin Smith View-esque universe film expecting your life to be changed. But occasionally that can happen. But just his passion on the subject and everything else has been really great. And honestly, the thing that's gotten me the most about it, we asked the question a few podcasts ago about who could be the next Stan Lee, who could be that next person. And the more and more I'm watching this and watching Kevin's role in our culture, I really feel like Kevin Smith could be the next Stan Lee if he's willing to take that.
Oh, man. And there's so many things that you could consider in that, just how much he looked up to Stan as a mentor and just as a friend eventually. And we saw the Captain Marvel cameo that intertwined the two. So spoilers, not sorry, because it's important to this conversation that people around this got how much of a 90s reference that was, but also how impactful that was to Kevin, and Kevin's response was equally.
That was Stan's first movie cameo, correct?
I believe so. I think that's the point of that entire concept is that was his first in Mallrats. And then also in Captain Marvel, the idea that that's the first time that Stan Lee was cameoing Stan Lee.
Oh yeah, there is that.
Yeah,
And-
no, that the Inception, the Stan Lee Inception Marvel issue of that. Yeah. So and Kevin's entire story, even before the heart attack, has always been just grab it, just do it. If you want to do it, you should be doing it. And well, I mean, that's kind of why we have a podcast now. But yeah, I love Kevin's story and I love the energy he's dumping in this stuff. And I'm ready for more Jay and Silent Bob either way, because that movie's just going to be cameo top to bottom based on, like you said, watching all of his social media. Like, he's called in all the friends.
Yeah, and the last one was the first time we got Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill back in the same movie. So,
which was pretty great.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's my big news. That was the other thing. I know it's not, a huge deal, but and Shazam is still in theaters and it's awesome. Or it just Yeah, Shazam is still amazing. I still got to see it, maybe tomorrow, so that's going to happen. As usual, Pull List podcast fans, Hector has seen this movie twice before I've made it into the theater, but that's not going to happen for Endgame because I have my Thursday 5 p.m. tickets already, and I'm going to stand in a stupid long line to ensure that nobody spoils that movie for me. I don't have tickets because
I have defeated you.
Well, maybe. I live in a small town, and our little theater doesn't do advance tickets. And anybody that really, really cares is going to go to a nice theater in another city anyway. And so I'm
can't you just give me this
my
one?
Crappy tickets. So
just give me this one. I'm going to win once.
Yep. Oh, you won.
Yay! I did it. But so yeah, lots of movie news this week. IDW possibly up for sale. So just to kind of round out the things that you want to know and hear from your lovely comic book hosts is when books are being delayed. So for those of you that have been enjoying Priest Run on, well, it's not, yeah, no, the Captain America stuff right now, you've been enjoying all of that wonderfulness. Well, it appears that issues 10, 11, and 12 are all going to slip by about a month. Not really sure what caused that, but you're going to see a hiccup in your Captain America flow, which you would have just gotten 9 here very recently, so you're going to end up waiting.
It feels like it's been slow anyway.
Yeah?
Like, the delivery has been slow.
It could be. I ended up not really carrying that as much as I wanted to. It kind of distracted me a few issues ago, and well, I need to save the money, the doll hairs. So it's hard to keep up on a full comic run at times, and it just lost me, honestly. But I know that people still love them some Cap, and so for the next couple months, you're going to be waiting a little bit.
Yay.
Yeah, well, that happens in comics. At some point, I would love to be able to hit the news and be able to tell you, maybe, just maybe, something's coming early. But I know that day is probably never going to come. So that's the news. And as always, you can join in on the conversation with Hector and I and all of your nerdy friends on the Love Thy Nerd Facebook community. Just search for Love Thy Nerd Community there on the Book of Faces. Hit join and begin your geeky adventure together with us. Tell us what you liked, what you hated, or possibly even what we missed. There's all kinds of things that can be discussed. So join us there in the community. And Hector, that brings us to today's main event.
Yeah.
That one thing we couldn't help but talk about this episode, and that, of course, is Batman Detective Comics 1000. That's 1,000. Celebrating over just about and over at this point 80 years of the Batman. 80 years. I'm going to let that sink in for just a moment. Just a minute. 80 years is a lot of Batman. So issue 1000 came out it was a week before this one, and this celebration of Batman sits at almost 100 pages, 96 pages worth of comics, 10 stories and 10 separate creative teams, and retails for about $10. So that's $1 a story. That's not terrible in comic book terms.
No.
And in terms of covers, there was only about 40 billion covers again for this, for variants. little over 30 official covers from DC. So if you've got that completionist streak in you, I wish you well. Good luck. Take out a second mortgage. You may need it.
I can't do it. I'm not about that.
I know. I got the Jock cover because it was really cool. I dig it, and I'm happy. So I paid my cover price. Oh, there you go. So, Hector, what made this moment in Batman's history, in Detective Comics history, in comic book history so important to you?
Well, I feel like for me, it was seeing a lot of the people that have made Batman great in my comic book reading lifetime all together in one book. The only people I missed being present were Jeff Loeb and Grant Morrison.
That is incredibly fair. And looking over the creative team list, you're like, okay, we got Scott Snyder, Kevin Smith, Paul Dini, Warren Ellis, Denny O'Neil, Christopher Priest, Bendis, Johns, King, Capullo, Jim Lee did art, Becky Cloonan stepped in here, Neil Adams did something, Alex Maleev. I go on and on and on, and I've yet to hit even an A-lister that you haven't heard from in a while. But the creative teams were amazing. But yeah, we still had that gap. Ugh. But yeah. So good.
It was good. And, outside of, the ones that I mentioned that I would have liked to have seen, I was really impressed by what I saw. I think I had a couple that, really stood out to me. But, to have a book where you have Denny O'Neil and Kevin Smith writing a story, that's great. I mean,
right?
Literally, that is the old school and the new school together. And Kevin Smith hasn't written Batman in a minute. And his Batman stuff has always been kind of like, they trust him, but only so much. And, they'll give him Batman, but they'll give him Batman in his own little bubble. So it's nice to see him with all the big boys with that. I think that was something that stood out to me.
No, absolutely. And just with 10 stories to absorb and going in so many different directions, what story was the one that you were like, that hit me? That was the one. There's a lot of different, because for folks, I'll just tell you right now, the stories cross a gamut of different emotions in terms of what they're trying to elicit or what they're just trying to communicate. So it's kind of hard to narrow this down, but we're going to go for it and try to do so anyway, because that's what we do as podcasters. So Hector, what was that one hitting story for you, and why?
Man, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but surprise, it was Kevin Smith.
Oh yes, let me just say real quick before you say why, I'm that guy too this week, because just wow. So go on, and then I will color commentary as appropriate, because that by far was my favorite as well.
So to his credit, I didn't recognize that I was reading a Kevin Smith story until I got to the last page. Because, the title and the writer, are on the last page of that story. But first of all, freaking gorgeous. You've got Jim Lee and Scott Williams, the artistic team behind Batman Hush, which, if you've heard me, you know that's my favorite Batman story ever. You've got that creative team together making just this phenomenal Batman story. And, that alone was gorgeous. For me, it was, the first thing that really hit me, outside of I was like, oh, look, there's Kevin Smith's character from Cacophony, his onomatopoeia character. And I was like, oh, look, someone's being nice to Kevin and including him. That was literally my thought. Not that he was writing this story. I was like, aw, they threw Kevin a nod, included his original Batman character in there. I straight up thought that his inclusion of this character was a mercy, not that he wrote the book. But, whatever. I don't know. It's I know you're going to talk about it too, but the whole story is you're seeing Batman trying to find the gun that killed his parents and doing that. But the artistic style of every time over and over, we're seeing Batman, like almost every panel, if you flip through this, as you turn the pages, you're seeing Batman being hit right in the centerpiece in his logo. And, you know, I was it didn't even dawn on me until it was near the end that was happening. But you see literally almost Batman's entire rogues gallery attacking him in his bat signal, or his bat chest plate. And, you know, it's a beautiful thing. There's a lot of visual aspects to it that, you know, all of these people are trying to attack not just the physical spot, but they're attacking who he is as that person. And that it's his tragedy and how he dealt with it that survived it. And I don't know, man. It was... I got weepy, because, like, towards the end, you know, Batman finally gets a hold of the gun, and Alfred, you know, is giving him guff about, why would you bring that in here? I know you like trophies, things like that, but that he had a bigger, more beautiful purpose for that weapon than simply a trophy. It's just, I don't know. I remember getting to not even the last page, but I think the next to the last page of that story, and just literally getting choked up over it. And I saw, like, before I even realized who wrote it, I was like, man, this is one of the most endearing Batman stories I've read in a long time. And when I saw it was Kevin, you know, the first thing I did was I got on Twitter and tweeted him, and I told him, I said, thank you for giving us a story that makes my appreciation of Batman grow. Because there's, you know, I've been reading Batman forever. Like, not the movie adaptation, but, like, I've been reading Batman for a long period of time. And there aren't many stories that make me look at him with more affection, or with more respect, or with more admiration. There aren't a lot of stories that, like, improve my stats on how I feel about Batman. And this one did it. Like, I cared and respected and connected with Batman more after reading Kevin Smith's short little story in this than I did before I started.
No, I think that's incredibly fair in this particular story, that when you start realizing that he's seeking out the weapon and everything, you're like, okay, it's kind of weird that in 80 years I haven't quite heard this story. We've heard Batman continuing to look for the person that pulled the trigger over and over again. There's plenty of stories that have been written and done on seeking out who the faceless robber in Crime Alley was, and it was really never about the Thing. And then to see that discussion with the backdrop of the Batcave, with all the stuff that Batman has collected from major events during his life, and also just the handling of that particular piece of it, that Alfred, like, finally, out of all the things that he's been put through, is like, this is the thing I'm not going to let you do, Bruce. That, like, he's like, why would you bring that thing of evil when all these other things are triumphs in your story? And he starts to tell that part of him, of that concept of, right, but this is kind of what brought me to be here. But then he takes that 90-degree turn to change that from not just collecting the thing, but to literally mold it into something new. And we're purposely talking around the end of this story, because you should read it to see where this story actually goes. Because I came to the same conclusion that a majority of our Batman stories of Bruce's character and who the Batman truly is that vengeance, I am the night, type stuff. And the end of this story, right? I'm Batman. We're just pretty great at this, or not, and I just totally
like
got Hector.
Cookie Monster with a mouthful of vanilla wafers trying to do a Christian Bale impression. Very specific cookie.
It's very right. This is why I love Hector, and this is why we're good friends, and why we share it with the world. This is one of those moments on the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. It would be like, John, cut that out, but he's going to leave all of this in, and he should. So you can gain new appreciation for our producers, and also just that we're pretty honest about who we are. And I am Batman. But that doesn't really the point. But
that was better. That was better.
The point is, you should focus on this particular story if you're looking to really kind of get surprised, like Hector said, by the person of Bruce Wayne and Batman, especially in the context of finding the weapon that literally set him on the path to be who he is. And yeah, no, I also tweeted out and took to the interwebs to voice my applause for this work, because super well thought out. And this was one story in 10 of just a bunch of other craziness. And
straight up, if that would have been the only story I paid $10 for, I would not have complained. I wouldn't have thought it'd be the best economic life choice I ever made, but I wouldn't have been disappointed.
Right. And it's so wild. And then just to think, I'm just double checking to make sure it's not immediately after. There is a story between it. But Warren Ellis's story also kind of caught me in a similar sense, but literally from like the complete opposite end of a similar spectrum. That, if you recall, the Warren Ellis story with Becky Cloonan doing the art, which Becky does awesome stuff in this book. This story was just very vivid in the colors and everything, but not to kind of take the whole thing from it, but it's an action sequence that really just keeps building up to getting to these terrorists, and you end up with a suicide bomber, which is kind of crazy, and Batman's pushing and pushing and pushing, and at the end, it's him face to face with the bombers, the last guy left, and it's like, yeah, man, I'm going to do it. It's crazy, right? And I'm going to do it. And Batman just keeps staring him down and going, look at me, look at me. And the guy's like, no. And then I'm going to spoil this one because Warren just nailed it. So
it's less of a spoiler.
You need to,
so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but he's like, he looks right at the bomber and he says, look at me. I'm already dead. Look at me. I'm trapped in this place and all I do is haunt the living. Is this what you want for yourself? And it just cuts to the final panel and goosebumps. Like, Warren Ellis is usually very pointed, very sarcastic, heavy on language and everything. And I thought he wrote a story with very little dialogue, which is not very Warren Ellis. Warren usually fills panels with dialogue. That I was super impressed that he held his punch for the end of that story. And just, wow. That, folks, if you enjoy the Batman and you're looking for a book that's just going to give you a great cross-section of stuff, you definitely need to pick up 1000, because the teams are amazing. The art front to back is great. If you have a favorite part of Batman's history or a creative team, you're going to get that in this book. So
there's one too. As my other favorite was the Legend of Newt Brody.
Right.
If you're a fan of Batman the Animated Series, this is for you, because this is Paul Dini, and it is to me, it feels like the spiritual successor to I Almost Got Him, the episode where they're all talking about how they almost killed Batman, but on a different take. But you get a lot of Batman the Animated Series, not exclusives, but rare appearances. You get Condiment King, you get a classic Harley. You get a lot of stuff that we really only saw active in Batman the Animated Series, but on the flip side, we get that vibe in a modern context. So we get Paul Dini writing about Damian, which, I imagine what Batman the Animated Series would have looked like with Damian. Just saying.
Ugh. Damian is the worst. What?
Hey, now you're gonna get us kicked off.
Yeah, that's an entirely different conversation.
There's some people that only like Damian, and I talked to somebody at a show like last weekend that thought every other Robin before Damian was trash, and I'm like, what?
Wow.
But anyway, the other flip side is Dustin Nguyen is the artist on this, and I love me some Dustin. He did one of the books. He did the third arc of books about Hush.
Nice.
There's an arc that came right after his, or right before his, after that, but he did the Heart of Hush series, and his art was fantastic. He's famous for Batman Little Gotham and things like that, and he's just a fantastic artist. So this was another one of those really great team up ones. But where Kevin's story touched my soul, this one made me warm, fuzzy, and giggle. So
right, no, absolutely.
And,
so
go ahead.
to be really fair to our loyal listeners here, we've talked kind of about some of the things that we absolutely thoroughly enjoyed from this mega cross section of Batman super perfect creative teams and everything. So I got to ask, did you see a story that didn't quite hit? That sure, we got 10 stories, maybe they'll all be perfect, maybe one wasn't quite for you.
The one that definitely wasn't quite for me, sadly, was it was Denny O'Neil's story. And Denny O'Neil, if you're not familiar, you should be, but Denny O'Neil is one of the legendary Batman writers.
Yep. Denny did a lot of stuff, not just Batman, like tons of stuff in Green Lantern and other stuff.
Question.
Yeah, Denny is DC in terms of old school. Absolutely.
Which, in some forums, he's been compared to the DC Stan Lee. He just without the flamboyant, persona that people recognize. He's like the subtle
for folks that
Stan Lee.
Yeah, folks that don't know Denny, he kind of is the opposite in terms of that at times, but an amazing writer.
He is credited with being the one to take Batman from Adam West camp to Dark Knight. He's the reason why we have dark, gritty detective Batman. That's he is that guy. And his story focused on Leslie Tompkins, Dr. Leslie Tompkins of basically the female Alfred to Bruce, yelling at Bruce for beating up criminals in the alley, on Crime Alley. And it felt like it fell flat as a story, but also it felt like weird that story was coming from Denny. I get that you have to write people to be your counter, but she's basically trying to convince Batman to stop beating up these people for his own sake, not for theirs. And I don't know. It just I didn't click well with it. I don't know. I just didn't love it. I'm not gonna say I was disappointed, but then also, while I'm pooping in people's cornflakes, I was disappointed with Neil Adams' art.
I was gonna save you. I was gonna save you from that because I agree that Denny's story it just landed differently for me, so it didn't stand out. But I'll do you the favor, and the one I kind of almost, if I had to say, I disliked more was the Christopher Priest, Neil Adams, and it's not that I don't think Priest wrote a good story. It's just that Neil's work lately has been distracting to me. I think we were talking about it before we started doing the podcast here today, that his Dead Man series, where he did the art and the writing, that it just, to me, like I love Neil Adams. I have a Neil Adams original Oliver Queen Green Arrow hanging in my home. It just feels like when he's doing serial work lately, it just seems a little looser than some of his older stuff. And it's a little distracting to me. And I don't know if that's kind of the same thing you take away when you see some of his work right now, but that's kind of where I ended up. And I'm prepared to take the internet flogging on that one because I do.
I don't think there's going to be a flogging. I just think it's one of those taboo things where you don't criticize a veteran of the industry. But
right. And that's why at the same time I say that Neil has done so much for comics. So don't hear this as we just dislike Neil Adams. It's just that this particular time, it just didn't hit for us.
Well, then, Kelly Jones's art style for Jeff Johns' story.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly Jones, it's not like he's a bad artist, but he's super stylistic. He did that story recently with Batman and Scarecrow that I read, and King of Fear. And it was hard to read the story because of the over stylization of it. And
sure,
I'm at the place where I feel like I would have enjoyed Jeff's Last Crime in Gotham story a lot more with a more subdued artist.
That's probably fair.
Not that it was bad. It's definitely, he's a skilled artist, but it's real styled. And then also, I don't want to bounce out of this without saying Tom King's story at the end was great. There's my last Tom King praise that I'm contractually obligated to do. The fact that you get literally the entire Bat family in one place. that I've never seen this whole squad of Bat Family assembled before is perfect.
Yep. Nope. As usual, you got to give Tom the high praise and way to close out such an epic tome of 80 years of Batman. And just wow, man. No matter how any of us look at it, it seems pretty darn clear to me that Bruce Wayne just ages well. I mean, 80 years? Man. But guys, gals, definitely go check this out. There's tons of Batman goodness from page 1 to page 96 with some of the best creative teams known to comics then, now, and up and coming. So if you're a fan of Batman, this is a book that you got to pick up and let us know what you think. But to close this out for today, comic book fans of all ages, it's time to take a look at what was in the pull box of Hector and I and see what awesome things ended up going home with us over the past 2 weeks. So, Hector, what did you pull for the last 2 weeks?
My big pull, just hitting the big ones, was My Hero Academia Volume 18, which was honestly just a really great conclusion to an arc that's been going on in My Hero Academia. It's the the arc that we last saw on the cartoons had started, and they had to Game of Thrones it, where they had started an arc that they were nowhere near ready to finish, and but it was really good, and it's everything that makes My Hero Academia a compelling story about what heroism is. Where you get to see Deku be Deku, like going plus ultra. You get to see the top 3 of the class doing their thing, and so I know you're not at this point where you've read this, but there's one of the stories that was just so good in it was the B story. After they finished the main, one of the main things that they did was Todoroki and Bakugo have failed their exams to progress as heroes because of their poor character.
Right.
That was in the cartoons and everything with that. Part of their remediation training is they put them in a full battle zone with an entire elementary school, and they have to win the kids over. So that's great. They put all of the failure students with a group of elementary school kids, and their job is to win their hearts. And just the premise of that was fantastic. But you get to see, all of the angry Bakugo and everything else, and it's great. And seeing how they thrive through that was really just a dope story. So that was a big pull for me. I enjoyed it. Also, I'm going to always pick up these books because I'm impatient and I can't wait for the anime. But definitely My Hero Academia Volume 18 was definitely worth picking up. And then my other big one... What was my other big one? Hold on. My other big one for the week was Domino Hot Shots 2.
It's your other piece that you're contractually obligated to mention Gail Simone and her awesomeness at least once every episode.
Well... Honestly, I wasn't feeling the last few things. I'd mentioned that I wasn't sure because they're doing this whole thing and they express it in the book, which made me happy. What I loved was the little 3-piece outfit that was Diamondback and Inez and Domino, and now they've got a whole superhero team that consists of a Wakandan princess, a South Korean special agent, Black Widow, and the regulars. And so, nobody in the room trusts anybody. Well, this issue, Deadpool is sent to stop all of them. And and so Deadpool shows up at the end of the previous issue and calls them out. And so Domino has been friends and more with Deadpool. Inez, who is, the cowgirl of the group, has been friends and more with Deadpool. They all have backstory and history. So when Deadpool shows up to throw down with them, they're trying to lovingly talk it out. Black Widow and everyone else bypasses that, and you get this awesome slugfest battle of epic proportions with Deadpool and Black Widow and a Wakandan princess and all of these things. And, you know, where you get moments where Deadpool is saying, you want to go manga? Let's go manga. I meant, like, doing all these things. And when he stops making jokes and Domino is genuinely scared because when Deadpool isn't making a joke, you should be worried. And it ends with, like, Deadpool and Domino, like, hugging it out and crying and talking about feelings in a not funny way. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I'm literally, like, turning the pages, like, oh, okay. And, and I gotta say, it's the best Deadpool book I've read in forever. I'm not a regular subscriber to Deadpool, just because of the saturation as of late. But I gotta say, Simone handled it like a champ. And if she were to take over Deadpool, I would pick it up. But
there it is.
Yeah. I don't know if I could see myself it all depends on the writers anyway, but I would trust. This is the same woman who wrote Plastic Man the same time she was writing Deadpool, and she also wrote The Secret Six. I mean, like, I'll take what she does. But man, I gotta say, those two books, and, like, on a side note, Glow, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling #1, based on the Netflix series, had a blast. If you like that series, which I'm a fan of that series, you'll have a blast. So those are my big picks for the week.
Well, that's good to know. So let's see. Sorting through my box for the week, I'm sure you also got Heroes in Crisis #7, but I think probably why you didn't say anything is what I'm about to say, which is this is another example of Tom King occupied a lot of space with a lot of information that ultimately may or may not have gotten us anywhere. So the story is progressing, folks who are paying attention to Heroes in Crisis. I'm ready to see where this is going and for it to wrap up. So we got the team together on the final push. We're very close to finally figuring out the details and what's truly going on here. But it was a lot more setup and seeing kind of how that whole thing plays out. So I'm just ready. I think I'm a little exhausted by this event at this point. I know that there's a punch coming. We just don't know where it is yet.
And I'm spending a good amount of time debating with people. I'm not a debater. I don't argue with many people, but, like, I've got some cosplayer friends that I actually do respect their opinions, and they're talking about how this book wasn't what they wanted. I'm like, well, if it's what you wanted, you wouldn't have needed to have a story told. So
right. No, that's fair.
I'm like, let them tell you a story and judge at the end. But I'm with you. It's we need to get there.
Yep. It's time for us to get punched in the face or in the gut or however this one's going to go down and find out who killed who, why. There's also some issues now about who may or may not be dead. It's comics, people. None of this should be surprising you. So it's a thing. It's going to keep being a thing. I also am still absolutely loving The Flash. Flash 67 was in the last 2 weeks. And I'm just going to say, because the book before it and this book is setting up a Trickster arc. And Trickster has always been fascinating to me as, you know, some people might call him like the Flash's Joker, but that's not right. The Trickster is like straight up just wacky as opposed to menacing. But Williamson, he's writing kind of a heavy-handed Trickster, so I'm curious where this arc is going to go. But the one thing that stood out to me, I don't know if it was fan service to New 52 or what it was, but I caught it while I was reading, is they talk about the Black Hand and the Church of the Black Hand sporting the Black Lantern Corps logo, and I'm like, I don't know if that's just a quick nod or if something is coming, because I know that they talked a little bit about it in the early Green Lantern books and the other stuff in Rebirth, so at least the Black Lantern Corps and Black Hand is present in this reality, but I'm fascinated why there seemed to be enough ink dedicated to saying, yep, this is a thing, here it is. You can see it right here. So it's very interesting to me, so I'm excited by that. So The Flash, still great, still should be reading it. Isola #7 also came out from Image Comics, and still, if you're looking for that absolutely gorgeous book that's just beautiful to look at, I've said it before, I'll keep saying it. You should be reading Isola for that reason. And it's a great fantasy story as well. And I'm glad to see it still going and still look as beautiful as it does, and it continue to be on time. So it's one of those amazing things when really complicated art and story come together that it just is. And on that note, Die number 5 also came out this week, and the story's starting to lose me a little because they're still not quite getting there, but it's another book that's just gorgeous. So if you love the Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of thing, Die still should remain at the top of your interest because the story is still unfolding and it's still quite beautiful to look at. And finally, I don't know, Hector, if you picked it up just to check it out, but I absolutely did pick up Dial H for Hero number 1 just to see where it went. And
I did not.
It's pretty fascinating. It's another book in that Wonder series and everything, so it's all kind of wrapped up in the new continuity of the stuff that Bendis is doing, but it was fun. It's kind of the same conclusion I came to with Wonder Twins of, I don't hate it, I don't love it, it's a thing. So I'm excited to see how that goes and all that wonderfulness. So those were my pulls. They were pretty interesting, but so lots of great comics over the last few weeks. But we want to hear about what you, the loyal Pull List podcast listener, has in your poll. This episode, Jonathan Reedy informs us that we just might be missing out on a great redemptive story in the current Superior Spider-Man run. So number 4 just came out last week.
Hold on.
March 27th.
Superior Spider-Man is still happening?
It's a new thing. It's not the old thing. They started a few months ago on kind of telling a new but slightly different story.
So is Octavius still in Spider-Man?
Correct. So that's the redemptive story that John has told us that we might be missing. The cool thing here is that Doc Ock is involved in this whole thing, but he's kind of doing the maybe I took the wrong path type thing is my understanding. So do you like the Spider-Man? Do you like villains that have some heart? Maybe some of those things? Well, John in the community tells us that this is probably what you need to be reading. So pick it up and let us know what you think. And John, thanks for sharing with us on the community throughout this whole thing, because that's the type of stuff we're missing. Like Hector just said, he went, wait, what? Nope, it's a thing. We're in issue number 4 already. So thanks for bringing that to our attention, and hopefully other listeners will find that interesting as well. So we love to hear about the stuff you're pulling and reading, so don't forget to hit us up every new comic book day, that is Wednesday, in the Love Thy Nerd Facebook community to tell us what you're reading and why. You tell us, you'll get featured just like John did on this show today. It's literally that easy. So that's it for us here at the Pull List Podcast. Episode 13 is in the books, and now it's been in your ears for about the last hour. But we couldn't possibly do this alone. As many of you know, we take this epic journey of podcasts and fandom with 2 other amazing podcasts that are part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. Humans of Gaming with Drew and Chris does interviews with game designers, producers, and creators. It gets to the heart of why they do what they do. And then we have the Free Play Podcast with Matt, Bubba, Kate. So good. Covers just about everything nerdy that you can possibly think of. It's super fun. No joke. It's pretty great, and it's humorous, and it's just everything you can possibly handle all at once. And finally, if you like things that are of the streaming variety and of the video variety, you can check out the Beard Bros on the Love Thy Nerd Facebook. They are doing games. They're getting to the point where they're actually playing. So that's Bubba and Matt, and they'll actually play a game, talk through it, and you get to watch them do that cool nerdy thing. So we got lots going on over at the Love Thy Nerd and Love Thy Nerd community. So just check it out. But mostly, Hector and I just want to thank all of you for choosing us as your primary comic book knowledge factory on a near weekly basis. So don't leave us hanging. Rate and review the show on your podcasting app of choice. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, and many more. You can't find us? Let us know at the Pull List Podcast at lovethynerd.com. That's an email address. Or look for us at the Pull List Podcast.com, and you'll find all of our past shows and all the good stuff there. This is what we do. Hector and I love comics. Thanks for listening, and remember, kids, read more comics.
You've been listening to the Pull List Podcast with Chris Poirier and Hector Mira, part of the Love Thy Nerd Podcast Network. Be sure to rate and review the show and share on all the social media.